first reading this morning comes from the prophet Isaiah, chapter 6, verses 1 through 8. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting on a throne, high and lofty, and the hem of God's robe filled the temple. Seraphs were in attendance above the Lord. Each had 6 wings. With 2 they covered their faces, and with 2 they covered their feet, and with 2 they flew. And one called to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of God's glory. The pivots on the thresholds shook at the voices of those who called, and the house filled with smoke. And I said, Woe is me, I am lost, for I am a person of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips. Yet my eyes have seen the Sovereign, the Lord of hosts. Then one of the seraphs flew to me, holding a live coal that had been taken from the altar with a pair of tongs. The seraph touched my mouth with it and said, Now that this has touched your lips, your guilt has departed, and your sin is blotted out. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send? And who will go for us? And I said, Here I am. Send me. Our second reading comes from the Gospel according to Matthew, chapter 5, verses 1 through 12. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up the mountain, and after he sat down, his disciples came to him. Then he began to speak, and he taught them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Friends, God is still speaking. May our hearts be open to listen and understand. Amen.
Good morning, everyone. It is so good to be here with you virtually, and I'm so grateful to share this space and to share in God's holiness with each and every one of you. This passage from Isaiah is one that I've heard numerous times throughout my life, mostly through hymns or songs. But every time I am faced with this passage, I'm confronted with the idea of what it means to not only be faced with God, but what does it mean to offer myself to the Lord as Isaiah does? The way in which he finds himself with the seraphs, who sound kind of scary with all of their wings, who are covering themselves, and being faced with Lord or God seems like an intimidating act. And yet Isaiah notices where he is and mentions his uncleanliness, and he is cleansed. And as soon as God offers the idea of who is here that I can send, Isaiah steps forward and says, Here I am. As Jocelyn had mentioned earlier, I am currently in my last year of divinity school. And when I tell people this, many are quick to point out the references, to point out that I have offered myself to God's ministry and that I have answered God's call. And while I appreciate the sentiment and this intention behind the words of encouragement, I always want to assure people that my path in ministry is not the only way to answer God. And it is not the only place of encountering God's work. I have learned so much about what it means to encounter God and to answer God's call through working with youth and from youth themselves. This past year and a half has been difficult for all of us, and we are trying to learn what it's like to be in community again in person or in new and different ways. But I'm grateful for the past year and a half that we had of our virtual community, the ways that we found each other in difficult places. During our time of virtual youth group, we decided that we were going to focus more on having fun in different ways to encourage each other. And though we might not have been speaking explicitly about God or God's word, we were still encountering God. I saw these youth as they showed up, or even when they chose not to, because they were choosing to be kind to themselves and to each other, answering God, not through the big dramatic calls to ministry or even calls to Christ or shows of affirmation, but in the quiet and the thoughtful moments. I noticed it when they engaged in new and hard conversations, when they made friendships across virtual spaces with people they had never met before. When a youth who usually didn't like having their camera on decided that it was this Sunday that they were going to turn it on and that they were going to speak with all of us, that they wanted to share something personal. When the youth shared music with each other and had moments of vulnerability, I saw God there, and I saw them answering God. Even when we played silly games, we were together and we laughed and we cheered each other on. And in this virtual world, I saw God. I saw all of us encountering God, answering God, just by being present and being their full selves, being our full selves together in community. We all have unique opportunities to experience God in a myriad of ways and to answer God, however God might be speaking to us. But one of them that we can continue on is showing up fully as we are, wherever we are. And this perhaps has been the greatest lesson that I have been learning from the youth in Oasis and in the youth ministries that I've done before, because the youth are not afraid to show up exactly who they are, as they are, in the ways that God has made them and the ways that they are experiencing God. And by living into their true selves, into their fullness of who they are a part of God's call, and they are answering it by just being. When we think about our true selves, even Christ calls us to notice these parts, that they are part of our experiences with God and part of Christ's ministries. In this passage from Matthew, Christ lists these conditions of the people and their outcomes, and we might be able to find parts of ourselves in them or parts of the people that we know and love. Whether they are the peacemakers who will be the children of God, or those of us who are mourning, we are comforted. The meek are inheriting the earth. And in this, God is calling us to be authentic, to find these parts of ourselves and to live into them, to find our fullness in our communities and in each other and in Christ. Because that is what the body of Christ looks like. And we, as we gather here together in this space and next week in our mixed space of in-person and virtual, are all a part of God's community, of God's love. And not only do we have the opportunity to be authentic to ourselves, but we have the ability to support each other in their encounters with Christ and their encounters with themselves. To share a bit of this, this past summer, I was working at a youth camp, and it was a church camp where churches came each week with their youth. And I was part of this community that focused on supporting each other and supporting the youth that came to not only experience God, but to know who they are. Each afternoon, there would be a different rotation for the groups of youth, and They had different activities relating to growing and experiencing and building a new kind of community. And one of the afternoons, which we called Express, we had different ways of expressing ourselves. During part of it, we would break up into 4 different groups, each doing something that the youth would volunteer to be a part of. One of them was learning a song that they would then sing in worship together. One of them was learning a silly dance that they would then teach the rest of the camp the following morning. One of them was writing a litany and a prayer together to lead in worship. And the last one was painting worship art. In these activities, the youth and us were allowed to find something that we could express ourselves in and to experience who we are and to experience this fullness with each other. I was amazed each week by the prayers that the youth would write together, the art that they would paint, and their excitement in teaching or singing. Some would come up and admit that they were challenging themselves because they wanted to know what it was like to lead in worship, or that they were usually shy about their singing ability or their art skills. And they felt that this was the place and the time that they could express themselves this way, that they were in the comfort of community to lean into these parts of themselves. And we can't expect youth, and we can't expect ourselves to only see God in one way or in one space, because there's no one way to answer God. I cannot tell you how to be your true self, but there are some ways we see it in each other. Being our true selves might be living out our values and morals. It might be pushing past our own discomfort in order to aid another. It might be offering a kind word or asking a hard question. It can be cooking a warm meal or showing up to a protest or just being present with the people around you. Being your true self is not one-dimensional or just one part that you lean on in Christ, but your true self grows and changes as you learn and as you experience the more of God's love, of Christ's ministry, and of your communities. The beauty in following Christ and answering God is that it is not stagnant. That when Isaiah answered, "I am here, send me," that Isaiah knows that things will change. But he knows that God is still there and God is still willing to send as long as he is still willing to be there. And even if you leave or even if you stray, God is still present and you can come back over and over again. What are the ways that you are learning or living to be your true self? How can we support those around us to do the same? Or how can we lean on our own communities to help us be true and authentic to Christ's call and to ourselves in the body of Christ? Because answering God's call is not just an individual act, but a communal commitment of love. And that when we are true to ourselves and when we are true to each other, we are being true to God. Amen.